Hey, welcome back to Pave the Way podcast, everybody. I am your host, Greg Helbeck, and today I am with Anson Young out of Denver, Colorado, who is the author of a recent book I just read called Finding and Funding Great Deals. And the book was so good, I just reached out to Anson and said, man, I got to get you on my show. So he agreed to it, and here we are. So Anson, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Of course I'd agree, man. You're awesome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, I'm glad to have you. So before we get into kind of your business and your journey, so can you just give everyone a little bit of background about who you are and kind of what you did before you got into real estate? Because everyone's always curious on what people did before they got into business.
That's right. Yeah. I wish I was like born into it or like it was a family empire or something. But it definitely wasn't. So yeah, I'm born and raised in Denver. I really started off if you want to go way back, my first job was like at a grocery store, but you're not interested in that. You want to hear, so I was in IT,
Okay.
information systems, and as a network admin, systems admin, and I had been doing that for a few years. I kind of fell into it. It was like a friend of my brother got me hired and kind of worked my way up, and it wasn't bad. It was actually good money. I was learning a bunch, kind of growing and expanding. So that was pretty cool. And then I got laid off like everybody did in like 2003 or something. And I really, I had like a 2-hour notice or something. It was like everybody gets in the conference room. Well, we've been, acquired, and, these many people don't have jobs and you're one of them. And, by the time you pack up, we won't see you tomorrow, basically. And so I had very little time to process this. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm not in control of this. Like, I have no say in whether they fire me, whether I'm laid off, if I'm one of the essential personnel. It doesn't matter how good I was. They're in control. And so I remember sitting right there and going, like, I don't like this at all. And I always thought, I would just have a career like my dad did. He was like 30 years in IT. And retired out of it, but he actually survived like 17 rounds of layoffs. And I remember, it wasn't like a big thing in my childhood, but I remember like this kind of stressful point of like, well, they're doing, another round of layoffs, or we're going to move buildings, or we're downsizing, or they got acquired. And he was always kind of in limbo, and I realized right then I don't want to be in limbo. And so from there, I did some bartending, which I really enjoyed. Got to talk to a lot of people, have kind of a flexible schedule. And then we moved to Phoenix, my wife and I, to be closer to my brother and his family. And I kind of realized, well, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad on the way down there.
Game changer.
And yeah, no, it's like the basic story, right?
Yeah.
It's like the pumpkin spice latte of real estate stories.
Hashtag basic.
Yeah, it's very basic. But it definitely changed. I was just ripe for that, for the planting of the seed of like, oh, this can be totally different. It doesn't have to be in someone else's control. So when we landed in Phoenix, it was basically like new city, new me, new new thing. Let's chase after this thing. And so that's kind of like the medium long story of what happened there.
Awesome. So I like it, man. I like always hearing people's backstories. I've heard you on a couple interviews before, so
Sure.
I know a little about this, but I'm sure the listeners haven't. So,
Sure.
it's funny you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad before we pivot on here. And because I read that book, I remember it's funny, I think a lot of people, they don't really search for that book. It's almost like that book somehow finds a way to get to them. So my friend's dad, I'm 24 now, so this was 4 years ago. I was 20. He's like, hey, you should read this book. And I was like reading books sort of at the time, more mindset books. And I remember reading that and I was just like, oh my goodness. It's almost like that book is like a permission for you to be allowed to go make money without having a 9-to-5 job, if that makes
Sure.
sense. That's what I got from the book, at least. That was like my big takeaway. Like, you can make money without having a 9-to-5 job by being a business owner and investing in real estate and whatever else you want to do.
Right. And I think it's interesting what you said, like, and I'd actually be pretty interested in finding out individual people's stories of how they came across that book.
Yeah.
It was basically handed to me by a good friend of mine, and we had been talking about, he's a school teacher, and we were talking about like rentals, like around, some game stuff that we were doing. And at the time I was like, who's going to give you 2 mortgages? Like, Like, who in their right mind would give you two of these things?
Yeah.
You know, and this is coming from someone, I didn't own my own house at the time. So I was like, one house is like a big deal. Like,
Yeah.
who the heck's going to give you two houses? Like, that's how small my thinking was.
Yeah.
And in the course of us talking about this, and he was kind of the same thing. He's like, I don't know, man. And we were talking, and then when it was time for me to leave, it's very sad because I'm saying goodbye to friends, but it wasn't forever. Of course, we were going to come back and visit and stuff. It's not like we're moving to China or something. Just 900 miles from Denver, but on basically, like, one of the last times I saw him in Colorado was he handed me the book just kind of out of the blue. He's like, listen, I read this and I think you should read it too. And nobody's handed me a book and just said, hey, you should read this thing. And then me going off and doing it. Like, none of those things had happened before. So it's very like, just like dropped into your life at the right time, which for me was like exactly that story.
That's so true. It's funny you say that. I gave it to my dad because he's always been like, just like, went to college, was a police officer for a while, did great, but never really had the entrepreneur mindset. And remember when I got started, he was like, my parents were concerned for me because I was so young and they thought I was delusional, which I sort of was at the time. But let's be honest here. And I gave it to my dad and he read it and he was like, that was a really good book. I appreciate it. And I remember he would highlight it and I was like, holy crap. Like, even someone who doesn't have that type of mindset, like, got value from that book. So
sure. Maybe that's a good trigger for, maybe I should stockpile them and just give them out to random people.
Sell them out of the back just give them out of the back of my car anytime.
Just like throw them at people as you drive by. You never know, you could impact someone's life that way.
True. So fast forward, obviously I was in Phoenix last month. It was 110 and man, it was hot. So back to Denver, you start real estate. So what does your business kind of look like today? What does the Anson Property Group look like on a yearly basis?
Yeah. So we mainly are doing fix and flip these days. Okay. A little bit of wholesaling. We're in one of these markets where it's a difficult market in that it's tight, inventory is low. Everyone and their mom knows what their house is worth.
Oh, it's like
yeah, exactly. It's very, very similar. We do act a lot like the coasts where, we weathered the recession pretty well, housing crash and all that. We did have, obviously a drop in values, but nowhere near like the Sun Belt or the Rust Belt or down in Florida. Like, we didn't get gutted. We went, we dipped down and then we shot back up. So everybody talks about how much their house is worth. So everyone knows what their house is worth. So it's kind of hard to go in and negotiate and have people call you on a bandit sign or something when their house is worth, $400,000-$500,000. Those aren't your typical, marketing channels.
Yeah.
So we operate in this market, and it seems like fix and flip is the best way to capture, the most amount of money for, let's just say, a smaller volume of deals. So if you only get like 20 deals across your plate in a year, wholesaling them, you're probably not going to get as much as you can if you fix and flip them. So we're mainly fix and flipping, a little bit of wholesale if it's outside of our wheelhouse, like historical district, or there's a couple of small cities that are really pain in the butt to deal with permits and stuff. So we just get rid of those.
That is, trust me. Oh my God, I just went through the ringer on one of those last week.
Yep. And you let someone else deal with that. Maybe they're more used to it, or maybe they know the permit process better. But anyways, and then and I am a licensed real estate agent, and so I'll do half a dozen to a dozen just random house sales or listings from either friends or family, people I meet through Bigger Pockets, or honestly some of the people I market to might just convert into a listing because that might be the best thing for them, or kind of the direction that they're going anyways. So we try to capture those and have as many tools in the tool belt as possible so that if they do want to list, we're kind of a one-stop shop for that too.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And I'm glad you kind of shared that because you're in Denver. I've been to Denver once. Really cool city. I really enjoyed it. My uncle lives there, except that when I landed, I didn't feel very good because of the altitude. So I was like, get me the hell out of here. And then
that'll get you. Yep.
Got me right between the eyes, man. I had 2 beers and I was like drunk. I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not even a big drinker. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like,
Yeah, you're done. Yeah.
am I on Mars? So anyway, it's funny that, and you have I think you have a similar business to me, because I used to do a lot of wholesaling. And then I started to realize I don't want to be the guy right now doing 10 properties a month. I'd rather do 3 to 4 good deals a month and maximize my marketing and my, just maximize the profit on every property and be a little bit more involved in my business, but have more of the profit, kind of stay on my side. So
Right.
I started buying the properties instead of wholesaling them now. And I'm telling you right now, especially in New York where I mainly operate, I mean, the margins are they're so much better and you're in control of the deal more. And I really think a lot of newbies, especially when I got started, I was attracted to wholesaling because I didn't have a lot of capital, but I also wasn't thinking to be resourceful. Like I could have partnered with people and probably gotten hard money. So I like how you shared that, because you're in a tough market, you're not just looking at your business like, oh, I need to wholesale everything. Like you're fixing and flipping. Are you doing any wholetailing where you're just cleaning them out and sticking them on the MLS? Does that work well in Denver?
It does. I've done a few, and it has to be obviously the right scenario. Something that's like, hey, if we just clean this up real fast and put it out there. I do like a friend of mine, Don Costa, who will do. He'll basically like wholesale first. He'll throw it on the market for 2 weeks. If it doesn't sell, they're just going to fix it and flip it anyways. It just kind of test the market. I haven't gone that far with it, but there are a few that are, it's perfect for the neighborhood, and we can still probably make about the same margin as we did with flipping. And so, yeah, we've definitely done that. It's a great way to put inventory out there in a low inventory market for sure.
Yeah. I almost stumbled upon one of them because I do some business in Dallas too. And I was wholesaling a lot in Dallas and we were doing pretty good on the assignments. And then I'm just like talking to the guy I was JVing with down there. I said, listen, what if we just close on this deal? It's so like, it was so cheap. Like we got such a good deal. I'm like, why don't we just put this on the MLS and see what happens? We sold it in one day for like 15 grand more than we would have got wholesaling. And I was
wow. Like, yeah.
Oh my God. And then like that kind of bell went off and I started doing it more and more. And that's been my primary business, light rehabs, and then some of these wholesales. So
okay, nice.
Because the book is called Finding and Funding Great Deals, I say we'll spend some portion of this podcast on the finding deals, how you're finding deals in Denver, and then we'll talk about some of the financing and funding parts of the deals, just so we can make sure we give everyone part A and then part B. So in a tough market like Denver, like you said earlier, I like how you mentioned sellers are not completely ignorant over the value of their properties. They know what their properties are worth. They're not, living under a rock. They understand that there's a high demand for real estate and low supply. So what is Anson doing? What's your main marketing channel that you're getting consistent deal flow from? And then
that's a great question. So for me, it's really three main avenues. So networking, referral, and then direct to seller. We used to say direct mail, but now it's so broad. It's just direct to seller. So whatever we can do to get in front of them. And so, those are kind of our three main things. And I wouldn't say that one is kind of better than the other. I try to work all three at all times to maximize, because sometimes you just have stuff that just falls on your lap out of the blue from networking or something. And that could be your best deal of the year.
The referral deals. I got one right now. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm working one of those too, where it was like, hey, I have a client. It's a realtor friend of mine. He's like, hey, I have a client who, wants really flexible, closing time frame. Maybe live in it after you close it, or maybe, push it out 2 months, or maybe close next week. We're not sure yet. And they don't want to fix anything. It's like, okay. And he's like, well, the first person I thought of was you. That's what I want to hear. So
now we're talking.
Yeah, exactly. So those come out of the blue, but only if you work, if you work your channels, if you, work on networking and work on referrals and refer people. Maybe it's not in your wheelhouse, but maybe it's, give back on those referrals, and they'll come back and pay you dividends for sure. It's a small world, everybody in my network, I try to provide value to them, not in the expectation that I get it back, but it always does come back. So
it always comes back. Universal law, man. I love that.
That's right.
Yeah, man. Sowing and reaping.
That's right. Exactly. Awesome. Yeah. And not having that expectation of like, oh, if I give, Pete a deal, he's going to turn around and give me two. It's like,
Yeah.
maybe a year later, he'll give you, something crazy. And he's like, man, you really helped me out. And now I want to help you out. And that stuff comes back around for sure.
Yeah, it's building the bond and the goodwill, and then just like putting like, even like, obviously with marketing and finding off market deals, if you treat people the right way, like
Right.
they're gonna be raving fans. Like we bought a nice little old lady's house. She was super grateful because she wasn't in like terrible distress, but her house needed work. She
Sure.
wanted to move. She was super reasonable on the price. Like she wasn't like giving the house away, but she was like she wasn't desperate. She wasn't like, oh my God, I'm getting foreclosed. She was like, listen, I want to sell on my own terms. I want someone to do the right thing. We bought her house. We did everything we said we were going to do. She was so happy about the transaction. She went to the senior club and told her friend who just inherited her aunt's property. She gave me a call. Now we're buying that house because we just kept our word with the seller, and we just provided that value. And next thing you know, I'm sure this has happened to you a million times. Like they tell their friends, and then next thing you know, you got a $50,000 profit with no marketing cost, and you're like, this is awesome.
Right. Yeah. Just for doing the right thing, or just
Love
for
it.
treating people like people,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you mentioned direct mail. So it's funny you say that because when I first started, I hated direct mail. I started doing more calling, and that started working. And now I'm actually doing more direct mail than calling now, and I'm seeing much better results. I think because the calling and texting, at least from what I've seen and talked to in the industry, that got so saturated. It's
Sure.
almost like now direct mail is starting to be the new thing again. So when we talk about direct mail in Denver, it's probably similar to San Diego, New York, and even Dallas. Are you a bigger fan of postcards or letters? Because I have my own opinions on this. And
No, I know. Yeah. So I will use postcards, but I'll use them in a sequence. Um, I'm a big fan of, I've never done yellow letters really en masse. I've done them like very, very niche. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, like we're talking like, 5-7 years ago when they actually worked, they still felt weird, to me. In this market, I felt like you had to have some sort of presence, like a brand or something that people can connect back to. And what kind of geared me towards that was testing out, okay, if I send out, let's just say 1,000 mailers this week, what does and they're all branded. They have my name, address, company name, phone number, like this is legit. This isn't some dude, working out of the back of his van or something. And I've noticed when I do this, in a well-educated market where people are savvy, they're not going to, they're not calling the bandit sign that's at Walmart.
No.
We don't actually see any bandit signs here, pretty much at all.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'd send out 1,000 letters, and I'd watch my web traffic spike. People would go check you out to make sure you're legit. They'll watch your videos. They'll get a feel for who you and your company are before making that call. And so that kind of branded approach was really important in a market like this, where so I do like letters. I like handcrafted, high quality pieces that really stand out in their mailbox. They don't look like something from their insurance company, or even the pink postcard of a third notice or something like that. Stuff just here just falls flat. So I really had to think outside the box and go, okay, everybody's doing this anonymous. I'm going to send out a bajillion postcards. What if I went the other direction and I sent something high quality, branded, and that they can go check out and then call? Be like, hey, I saw your video where you're, throwing that thing into the dumpster or whatever. I used to have like this kind of joke thing where I'm like, hey, and then I'd like throw it over my shoulder, and I'm like, there's an outtake where I missed it or something, and then another one where I landed it, and people would come back. They're like, I'd be talking to them at their house or something. They're like, oh man, that video was kind of funny where you hit the side of the dumpster and clanged, and it even scared you, because it's like clang. I'm like, oh crap. And it just goes to show that people do check it out. People do watch it. People will check you out in a market like this before they even call, because they want to make sure that you're not scamming them out of their $500,000 house.
Yeah, it's a big deal, especially if this is usually the only house people own. They don't buy, several a month like you and I. So this is a big deal for them, like a real estate transaction.
It's not even like a $25,000 house in rural Tennessee or something. That's like there's a different approach when you own that versus like, man, the land value on my house is worth 400, and I think it's probably worth 500 or something. Like that's a whole different approach. That's probably like their entire retirement or their entire like, thing, their financial future could be that 500 grand versus a $25,000 house. That seems a little bit more disposable mentality wise for the seller.
Yeah. No, that's smart. And I like how you, especially too, if you're listening to this podcast and you're in a more expensive market, like it's funny you say like down in New York where I'm from, like I moved to San Diego, but I do most of my business in New York near the city.
Okay.
And like, where I'm from, actually, it's a little bit more upstate. It's an hour from Manhattan, but we buy in areas that are 20 minutes from Manhattan.
Okay.
And down there, if you start sending, like you said, those postcards where it's like those cheesy ones, you don't even get a single call. But if you send a letter or a postcard with real marketing copy on it that's legit, people are like, oh, hey, I saw your card. You seem like a nice guy. I figured I'd give you a call. I just inherited my aunt's house, et cetera, et cetera. And the savvier people are more receptive. Like you got to think about it. Like the more professional people are more receptive to the professional message. And those are people who are owning houses that are $500,000,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So you gotta, you can't put a square peg in a round hole, as they say.
Exactly. And it goes to show that like, maybe if you did a split approach or a blended approach, you could hit the people who maybe they don't care for the professional letters or the, handwritten letters or whatever. Maybe the postcard is like hits them at the right time, who knows, but you never know. So that's why you do, and you try things and you try and figure it out.
Yeah. Hey, I guess it is direct mail related. I'm sure you've heard of this. If you haven't, this definitely will help. So I'm trying to just stand out from the competition with direct mail. So what I've been doing, and everyone talks about skip tracing. So what I'm doing is this. I don't know. Basically, when you buy a mailing list, let's say it's whatever list you buy, it's going to have the mailing address and then the property address. But what I'm actually doing, and this is definitely letting me stand out, is I'm actually taking the mailing address, like the property address is the property address. I'm taking the mailing address and I'm skip tracing the mailing address, and I'm getting the most recent address for that person, which is usually not the mailing address. So then when I'm sending them mail, no one else, unless they're doing that, is really getting to them. So in your market, I'm sure, unless you're in Denver listening, you'll have to get blacklisted from this, but that's working real well. It's almost like you're combining the skip tracing and the mail, and most people are mailing address A. I'll skip trace it, get the most recent one, and then I'll double check. And now you're the only one they're talking to. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find ways to stand out.
In your experience, like kind of what percentage is there a difference in between those two addresses?
It depends on the list. If you're mailing a list it really depends on the list. If it's like a more distressed list, there's a high correlation because there's a different mailing address, because usually those houses are vacant, et cetera.
Sure.
If it's a list where even the vacant house list, same thing, like there's a high correlation, especially the vacant house list, because every vacant house is not like, should not be, no one's really living there because the USPS is saying it's vacant.
Right.
So you're going to see a high correlation of, if you skip trace that list, you're going to see a high correlation of most recent addresses. So now, assuming those are good addresses, they're not going to bounce back. You're going to stand out against your competition all day long.
Interesting.
The more owner occupied the list is, the less there's going to be a correlation because they already live there.
Right.
But definitely quick tip for you, if you're doing stuff in Denver, that definitely will help you out, and you'll separate yourself.
No, that's cool. Yeah. I guess we've done the standard skip tracing, but never trying to find their most recent address, which is wow, learn something new every day.
For sure, man. Yeah, for sure. So let's pivot over to the and then let's wrap up direct mail. What are you seeing on like either a leads per contract or a cost per deal basis in Denver, just to give people a feel on like some of these more expensive markets? You gotta be willing to spend more to acquire a customer.
Yeah, and KPIs aren't my most like up to date thing. I kind of circle back and I get to them and update them and refresh them. But I think that we're roughly like 20 calls per deal.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and which I'm trying to think. I think the last time I pulled those KPIs down to the dollar per deal number was about like 4,000.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. Just for direct mail. Yeah.
That's pretty good for Denver. I mean, that's not terrible. I mean, your profit's going to be much higher than 4,000. So
Right. Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what they say on those
No,
TV shows. Yeah.
yeah. And going back to like that approach of like the high quality, like handcrafted, like we definitely target niche, niche lists or combined lists. So we're not hitting like, 10,000 just, non-owner occupant. We're not casting the net that wide. So maybe the cost per deal goes down the more niche you are. But our pieces are expensive too. So we're not sending 30 cent postcards. So
Yeah, exactly. My best performing list right now on direct mail is just tax delinquent, tried and true. I don't know, for
nice.
some reason, some markets that list just gets murdered, but in my main market, that list just converts. It doesn't get the most calls.
Sure.
For some reason, are just the people who call in off that list. We can really provide a lot of value for them. So that's been my highest converting, niche list. And
Sure.
that's like an 80. That's a 20%. That's like an 80-20 list for me. Like I need to hit that
Nice.
list. That's
Wow.
where we make the profits. Yeah.
Do you think that
Really.
correlates to obviously around the city in Manhattan, property taxes are really high. Do you think that correlates? Like
Yeah.
your property taxes might be like 13, 14 grand a year. It
My
might
buddy's
be easier
22,000.
to, yeah, it might be easier to fall behind on that.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
think that's so true. Yeah. In the counties that I work in, the higher property taxes, the more distressed they're going to be. And a lot of the times those are properties that have no mortgage on them.
Ooh, yeah,
Plus the bank would pay the taxes because they don't want to lose the collateral.
sure.
So we find a lot of our bigger deals that we've done, like 6-figure profit-ish deals, have been off that list because they fell behind in their taxes. They needed someone because in New York the foreclosure laws are different. So like
Sure, sure.
we have the system like down to a science, but that list is it's just knocking it out of the park for us.
Nice.
Followed behind vacant. So
That's huge.
and
Yeah.
listen, niche lists are the way to go. I mean, the niche lists, they are the quickest way to getting yourself a good deal. So I've also done good deals off the other like non-niche lists.
Sure,
So
sure.
it comes down to consistency. So let's pivot over to the funding part of the show. So, obviously Denver, Colorado, you're not buying properties for 10 grand like I am in Texas sometimes. So what are
Sure.
you doing to fund your real estate transactions?
Yeah. So mainly historically we've done private money.
Okay.
And over the years tried to find better and better ways to get that. And then like everybody learns lessons, like you should always be looking for money, or you should always be looking for your contractor. You should always be looking for your next electrician. Even if you think you have a stacked team, they could all disappear overnight. So I've learned that lesson a few times on all those categories, where I thought I had money sitting there, and then I email my guy and he's like, oh no, I just bought a house in Florida. All my line of credit went over there, and it's like $2 or $3 million line of credit, and so when you think you had money stacked up, you didn't. And so so I've run into that before, but mainly private money. Most of my guys have been older individuals who either sold a business or ran their own business, or they all seem to be on the entrepreneurial side, which is pretty cool. And then now they're like, well, I want this money to work for me. I don't want to really deal with active part of what you do. I'll just get a return on that. And then yeah, it's a total relational relational lending. So there's a lot of trust both ways. And yeah, I really like that approach. And, but at the same time, my very first flip was a partner deal where I didn't have any money. And my friend, he didn't have any deals, but he had money. I had a deal and no money. So we linked up.
Perfect.
And
I've
did
done
it
that.
that
So
way.
I love that.
Exactly.
Peanut butter and jelly strategy.
It totally is. Yeah. And it was funny because we were sitting at Starbucks and I'm like, man, I got this REO. I think I can get it for this price, and at the time I was pretty new to everything. And I was like, I just don't know how I'm going to do it, and he's like, I just sold a house, it was a primary residence and I'm sitting on, 140 grand or whatever. He's like, and I don't have any deals. Let's why don't we do this? And so literally 2 weeks later we closed on it, and
I love it.
yeah, it was perfect because, and if I didn't go on that coffee meeting, we worked in the same office, but it was like, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee. We might not have ever talked about it. which it never would have happened. So it worked out perfect.
That's awesome. I'm glad you shared that example because people, I don't think they put enough value into actually networking and doing it with intentions and
Right.
like not like I think people that they want that as just human beings in general. Like I'm a big nerd on like sales and human behavior. And it's like people naturally want the path of least resistance. They want immediate gratification. And it's very difficult, even for me and for you, for everyone. We all want it right now. But like
Right.
we have to be in the business of planting seeds because the more we do that with networking, with meeting people, you never know, even this podcast, like your book, it's just putting all the good resources out into the world. And then eventually it will come back in areas you didn't expect it to come back in. So your example of you meeting a gentleman at Starbucks who had money but no deal, and you had a deal, no money. Well, if you didn't network, like you said, I'm sure you made good money on that deal. That would have never gone anywhere. And people, I think nowadays they want to stay behind their computers and they don't want to go out and shake hands and break
Right.
bread. Like, doing the old school networking will never go away.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, that's one big reason why we started up I started up a networking group, just a meetup group. It was, and now we have, 5 locations in Denver, or in and around Denver. And, we try to, and it's pure networking and there's no sales or anything like that. Because we wanted to be different from the real estate investment clubs and stuff, where we can just provide an area and have people come and grab a beer and literally just get in front of people, every single month. And it's been huge. It's been awesome for everybody involved. So, but yeah, like the old school is sometimes, the way back to, where we should be going, like picking up the phone or meeting somebody for lunch or coffee, and instead of just shooting an email. It's like that extra time and effort definitely pays off for sure.
It's so true. It's so true. And it never gets old, man. It never gets old. So before we start to wrap the show up here, do you have any experience, Anson? Because a lot of people, private money is great. I use it, you use it, but that takes sometimes a little bit of time. You can get it relatively quickly, but you can get hard money right away. Do you have any experience using hard money? And if you do you have any best tips and tricks just for people on having the right expectations before they go out and they decide to borrow hard money? Because I have some experience with it, but I want to hear what you have to say in a different market.
Yeah. So a little bit. And
Okay.
and what I've done, especially going back to, not having my team deep enough, I did go to a hard money company and basically said, hey, in case something happens, or maybe we'll date for a while and see how this works out. Obviously the terms aren't what I'm used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not just expense terms. Like I'm actually used to no payments.
That's the thing I hate about hard money.
Yeah, and so it definitely changes how your business works. If you have a monthly outflow, if you have 2, 3, 4 properties, suddenly you're paying, $10,000 a month. Where you're not used to doing that, you're used to paying it all on the back end. So, so I have approached and kind of gotten, I guess, what they call pre-qualified or whatever. Basically the money's there for the right deal, and that gives me peace of mind that, hey, if I go into the bullpen and nobody's there for some reason for my money guys, I at least have a backup option, waiting in the parking lot or something, ready to come in and kill it. But yeah, as far as expectations, I mean, if you're coming in from zero, just know that you're just going to pay a lot, your upfront points, and sometimes they have appraisal fees and draw fees, and just know it's going to be expensive. And to have some money stocked away, because they will look at reserves. They'll make sure that you have money that set aside so that you can pay them every month, and then pay if something goes wrong. Some of them want to see like 40 grand sitting in a bank account.
Yeah.
And so, knowing those expectations up front, where they might be easy on credit, they might be easy on experience. They definitely will be heavy on fees, and then heavy on that expectation of like, hey, if this goes wrong, we want to make sure that you have money set aside, because they're not in the taking back the property business. They're in the, getting a return every month business. So
yeah. Oh, that was great advice. And it's I'm glad you shared that, because I've used hard money to do some great deals. And the key with hard money is I didn't just go in on my first deal with hard money. You could do that. I saved up
Sure.
a amount of reserves, and I waited, like you said, for the right deal to come across my desk to be able to pounce on that thing with hard money
Right.
without having to worry about private money on this one. And the key with hard money, a little trick for everyone, is that you got to anticipate how long you probably think you're going to hold the property. And then you got to take that monthly interest payment and multiply that by how many months you think you're going to have the property. And then I would say add another 2 extra months on there, and then put that money in the bank. Like it's always there, because you don't want to have, money coming out of your business operating account.
Right.
Like that. You're going to really get yourself in cash flow troubles. Have some money saved up, put that money in the bank separate. And then, always, kind of under promise in terms of like, just always have more money than you think you need to have, because
Right.
you don't want to start running short. And if you treat it like that and the deal makes sense, you can still use hard money and make tremendous profits. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I mean, any deal makes sense at the right numbers, and even the financing. I mean, I'm paying like 10% for hard money now, and that's fine with me. And it works
Sure.
on my deals. And then if it doesn't work, I'll wholesale it or I'll get private money. So great advice there, Anson. I really appreciate that. So as we're going to start to wrap the show up, I got 2 more questions for you. The first one is, what's your favorite book you've ever read? Because I know you've written a book. So on the
Right.
reading side, what's your favorite book besides Rich Dad Poor Dad and your own book? What's a book that's really had a lot of impact on your life?
Yeah. So this one I've said a lot in different things here and there, but honestly, still my favorite book of all time, called "The Obstacle Is the Way"
Oh, that's a great.
by Ryan Holiday. So that that kind of encompasses my operating system, as they say. Like I've tried to dive deep into stoicism, and it made that book did drop in my life at the right point as well. And I just having it in the tools that it brings in just coping with business and life and family and everything. It's not a business book, but you can definitely incorporate it into your business. And be there are a lot of things that you can't control, and these things are out of your hands, and the amount of time you should worry about those things is zero. And so worry about the things you can control. Don't worry too much about the things you can't control, things like politics or the hurricane that's coming. Like you can control being prepared for the hurricane, but you can't control the hurricane itself. So why worry about it? Worry about what you can control, and then everything else kind of falls away. And honestly, it makes me more at peace with life for sure.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's a great book. I've read it multiple times. I have a couple different copies, and it's funny you say the whole control thing. It's very easy for me to comprehend that, but in my day to day, it's like I have to revert back. That's so much. Check this out. I don't know if you can see this. I have my weekly agenda or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
If it's a controllable activity, it has a C next to it. So at the end of the week,
Nice.
it's up to me to decide if that got done or not. And then I want to get a new deal this week, right? I can't necessarily control the deal, but I can control the marketing going out to get the call, the offers to then hopefully get the deal. So yeah, I live by this stuff. I'm glad you shared that book. That's a powerful one. People gotta check.
For sure. Definitely my favorite. It's the one I've given out the most. Like we were talking about throwing Rich Dad Poor Dad out the window at people. That's definitely one that I've given the most out to, because it's changed me so much, and a lot of people in this kind of mindset, in this network that we run in, have benefited from it too. So it's huge.
Awesome. So what's the future look like for Anson Young? I mean, what do you want to do? What do you want to be doing in a couple of years? You want to still be doing a lot of fix and flips? You want to get into some more, buy and hold stuff? What does the future look like for Anson?
Yeah. So it's long overdue, and a lot of people have been, kicking my butt about it for a long time, since I've been on the transactional side for so long. Friends like friends who have rental portfolios and mobile home parks and Airbnbs and all the smart things over the years have been telling me to pivot in that direction for a long time. And so I'm working towards that right now, kind of finding, it's probably not going to be Denver. It'll probably be 1 or 2 outside markets where cash flow makes more sense. But yeah, pivoting towards rentals and pivoting towards a more long-term non-transactional income, to where I can go to whatever, I can go to Hawaii for 2 months and not worry about, you know, me being there every day to find deals and to, you know, yell at contractors and, you know, all the fun stuff that we do.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know that there are ways to set up a flipping business like this. You know, there are very smart people that I know who have set up transactional businesses this way where they can step out and it still runs without them, which is great too. But I do like that long-term monthly income type scenario. So
the way the money's being made opposed to,
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, we don't have to go find, you know, 10 deals this month. Maybe, you know, we have rentals that are paying the whole thing and then I can go do whatever I want. But
we have a lot of similarities, man. I've been thinking that same way for the last couple years. And I know like it's almost like the flipping. It's such good money when you get good at it.
Sure.
And then I'm kind of a weirdo. I really enjoy it. Like I think it's fun. Like so
Sure.
like I love kind of the whole wheeling and dealing aspect, getting the deal, marketing, campaigns. But at the end of the day, I know I need to be doing this rental strategy. And
Right.
it just, for me at least, it's going to just come down to me being disciplined with my underwriting and keeping these things as burrs, you know, because a lot
Sure.
of these properties will work if I refi them, but I want that 30 grand right now, you know.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
have 5 grand left in the deal and make $200 a month.
Yep.
It's tough, man. I feel you, man. I'm on the same boat, man. It's tough.
Well, we'll get at a transactional together one day. Maybe.
Yeah, and then we'll do a podcast on how we got out. So
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
awesome. Well, listen, this was a lot of fun, Anson. I really appreciate you coming on. If people wanted to connect with you and find your book, guys and girls, listen to this. Anson wrote a fantastic book called Finding and Funding Great Deals. I listened to it a couple weeks ago in the car. I think I listened to it in like one day because I was driving around all day. It's a great book. I really recommend it. So, Anson, people were looking to connect with you and then maybe pick up a copy of your book. What would be the best way for them to get in touch and then find the book?
Yeah, so I usually point people towards my Bigger Pockets kind of profile. I've been on there for since like 2005, but yeah, I usually point people in that direction. They can message me through there. You know, I'm open to. I get questions all the time about all kinds of different stuff. You know, people who may have read the book and had more questions about marketing or yeah. So if you want to get a hold of me, definitely. It's just biggerpockets.com/users/Anson. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. And yeah, and you know, if you're so inclined and want to pick up the book, it's there on Bigger Pockets. It's at Amazon. It's at Barnes and Noble. It's they threw it out in a bunch of different places, which is pretty cool. And so yeah, so any of those avenues, and yeah, pretty easy. So yeah, definitely hook up with me on Bigger Pockets, and we can chat and be friends there too. So
awesome. All right, Anson, thanks so much for your time. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is awesome.
See you, man. Bye.